the next item on the agenda that I'd like to talk about is you've obviously the strategy is to expand the game with free DLC, but there is one paid DLC coming up.
Yeah.
A very special one. Could you just tell us the story? I mean, you've already told me, but
Yeah.
for the viewers of just how that came to be the Brian Blessed DLC.
Yeah, it was really, it's really actually quite remarkable. I have lots of ideas and lots of ideas that I never do anything about. But this happened to be one idea that came about that I actually took action on. And we were just, myself and our trailer director, he and I were talking, and we were like, okay, we're going to have this Kingmaker edition that we're going to release, and we want to remake the launch trailer. And the launch trailer was about, what makes the perfect weapon, and it was the skill of the soldier. And so we were like, well, Richard Neville, super intricate part to War of the Roses, so the Earl of Warwick, and he was dubbed the Kingmaker because he actually is. I think he actually pretty much caused the entire conflict because he was trying to put a person in power to be king for personal gain. So he was funding a lot of this. So it was like, that would be awesome if it was kind of like we did him for the VO instead, and he was like, what makes my perfect king? And like he's talking to an unknown liaison. And I was like, we should totally have Brian Blessed do this. And it was initially kind of almost a comment in jest, not as like an epiphany, but it was like, and then the director was like, dude, you should do that. And I was like, I think you're right. And so he actually looked up on IMDb, got the agent's contact information for Brian Blessed. I was a bit scared to actually call this agent at first because it seemed so bizarre of a thing to do. So I tweeted to Brian Blessed, and I was like, I have this game called War of the Roses, and I would love to have you work with you at some point with doing some VO work for it. And he never replied, but he favorited my tweet, and that got me really excited. So then that gave me the courage to call his agent and be like, okay, here's my pitch. And then he's like, cool, sounds interesting, write it out in an email, and then I'll pitch it to Brian Blessed and see what he says. And so, eagerly, like a kid who's waiting for Christmas for this email to pop up, like checking my email all the time, refreshing it all the time. And like, come on. And it took a couple days, and he finally came back and he said, Brian really liked the idea. He loved the idea of, doing the script as Richard Neville. He's played a lot of different characters within that time period. So this is one that he hadn't really got to do. So, and then I was like, well, if we're going to get him in to do that, it's not going to cost us any more or less to do the multiplayer VO. It's not a huge amount. It's about 350 lines. And he's a pro, so I knew he would just zip through it really quick. So we booked so this was the beginning of December. So we got everything sorted right before Christmas holiday. We got a contract signed and an agreement, and then we booked a date for January 15th. I flew to London. We recorded the VO. I recorded some footage of him doing the VO myself, and now we're going to be releasing it at the end of February. So.
Can we expect? One of the fun things here is that players who don't buy this will still get to hear it when they face players who have bought the DLC, which is a nice touch. Would you even consider doing more voiceover packs, or is this like the definitive one, or so you could have like?
That's a good question. I hadn't really thought about doing more of them, but that would be kind of fun. One thing we want to do is update it to where somebody can when they have that, they can select what VO they want to play. We have several different styles, and maybe letting them pick that certain one and adding more. If I did another one, though, it's going to be really hard to kind of one up having Brian Blessed. So my only other guess would be if I could get Patrick Stewart. That would be the perfect, because they're actually friends and they went to acting school together when they were younger, and I had actually mentioned that to Brian Blessed, so maybe I could convince Brian Blessed to convince Patrick Stewart.
Maybe there's another tweet coming.
Exactly.
And you touched, of course, on the Kingmaker sort of repackaging, is that the best way to put it? Because it's not really an expansion or a release in a traditional sense, because everyone's getting upgraded to it, and it's basically just a way of saying the game is bigger now.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's matured, and here's a new title for it to kind of reflect that. Because what happens is when you release on Steam, you give a product page that represents what you released with. Wink, wink. But it's like, so what we want to do now is we've added a significant amount of new content, and we're going to be adding more content. So we want to kind of have an opportunity to catch that page up, and we're going to be adding the new siege style game mode that we call Assault and Assault Castle. So there's two flavors of it. One's like an attack defend scenario on all the maps, and then Assault Castle is going to be specifically on the Wakefield first as a map with micro events where you're like defending a cannon as it goes up the hill, and you're trying to get it into place and blow open the gates and then push into the castle and eventually siege the castle and different layers as well. So that one is going to be much more unique and have kind of like a story event to it, so to speak. So.
Do you have a lot of player demand for this kind of new game mode for War of the Roses?
Absolutely. They probably would have crucified us if they could have for not have putting it in the original. But we had we had budget constraints, and understandably to the players, that they don't know about that, and that's not their because that's my problem to deal with, not theirs.
They still pay one price for a game when
exactly. And we wished we could have done that, but we weren't able to. But what I did do is secure more funding so that we could continue adding new content and bringing in these new game modes and keeping the whole team working on the product. And that's a hard thing to do. It's very there's a lot of risk to all of these things, and to have Paradox supporting us on that was phenomenal, and working with Fat Shark is great. I mean, my role, I'm technically with Paradox, but my only franchise that I deal with is War of the Roses, so I take that entity and I protect it, like a rabid dog. So it's like, this is my baby, and I don't care if it's Paradox as the publishing company or Fat Shark as our developer. I'm doing everything I can to protect that franchise, and that's my role. And I think it's worked out really well. Fat Shark's really close to us, and they're moving even closer. So we're there every single day, talking to them, working on it. So it is a very holistic synergy between the two groups, especially my franchise team group.
And obviously the schedule is to do monthly updates all the way, all throughout, as long as players keep playing, or what's?
Well, we have a memory limit, unfortunately. So we will eventually hit that max on new weapons and armors and things like that. But we'll always be able to add things that don't take up that, like new game modes, or even adding more esport capability and adding new levels as well. So that we can keep doing. So those are the areas you'll see more focus on. But by the end of it, we're going to have so much content that I think adding even more would almost become daunting. Like a new player, it's like right now you have 2 pages typically of armor paints that you can stylize your armor with, and that's by what we have in our limitation, I think we'll have about 12 different armors. More than that, I think. We're around 12, and each one has at least 10 plus paints. So that's 120 different possibilities that one player can pick from in that. So we'll just let that rest, and hopefully most people are happy with that. And then we have other things in the pipeline that we can't talk about yet, but we're looking at as many options as possible. We're exploring not just the 15th century in England, but looking at other possible time periods and conflicts as well, to see where we can take this franchise. We're not going to just stop only with this game. This franchise is going to grow.
So you don't feel that the title limits you in that way, or would you consider changing it to a different title, or?
I would probably, we would definitely would consider that, but initially I think it's smarter just because we built a name around this, and we have a loyal community and fan base that when they hear about that, they're going to be more interested, and so I think that's going to be okay. I think we can do it in smart ways and make sure that there's at least a tie-in that makes sense.
So, very interesting indeed. So. Looking forward to seeing more of the future of War of the Roses, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.